Good evening, dear colleagues. Welcome to another INGED Zoom talk. And today our guest is Professor Dr. Paşa Tevfik Cephe from Gazi University. Paşa Hocam is a dear and very special friend for me, and he has always been a great supporter of INGED. His interest areas are teacher training and teaching language skills. The title of his talk this evening is Integrated and Segregated Teaching of Language Skills. Thank you, dear Paşa Hocam, for being with us this evening, and welcome again. And I'm going to leave the screen to you. The screen is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Aydan Hocam. It's really great honor to be here on this session. Thank you very much for your invitation. So today I'm going to talk about segregated and versus integrated teaching of language skills, but probably we will be focusing on integrated teaching of language skills mostly. But in order to understand the difference between these two terminologies, I mean what we mean by segregated teaching of language skills and integrated teaching of language skills, so we will have a discussion about, first of all, about the segregated teaching of language teaching. Okay, let me share the outline. So the flow of my presentation will be like this. We will start with segregated skill instruction, and then we will be focusing on integrated skill instruction. And probably we will have a discussion about the reasons behind skills integration. Why do we need it? Or what happens if we integrate those 4 basic skills in our classes? And then I'm going to talk about 2 forms of integrated skill instruction. Probably you are all aware of content-based language instruction and task-based language instruction. So these 2 types of integrated skill instruction are mostly used in our field. And I will conclude my session with some suggestions, with some considerations about integrated language teaching. So I will start with a quotation. So could you please read it, and then I will try to comment on this quotation. So if the strands are not woven together effectively and well, so the instructional loom is likely to produce something weak, right? Something pale or something not recognizable, right? So if we consider, or if we adopt this quotation into our real teaching environment, we can say that if your instructional design is not woven effectively, so it is not likely to produce the expected outcome. Probably most of us have some classes and some teaching experiences. So here we should be careful about handling these skills, I mean our 4 basic skills, segregatedly or integratedly. But as you know, in our field, most professionals take it for granted that language instruction is naturally divided into discrete sets or 4 basic skills. So let's start with how we should handle these 4 basic skills segregatedly. Okay, so if you look at the first quotation, again taken from Mohan, so the mastery of these discrete language skills, such as reading and speaking, can be seen as the key to successful learning. But please don't forget that when we talk about language learning and teaching, so if you separate this process from content, so that means your teaching becomes aimless. So even if it were possible to fully develop 1 or 2 skills in the absence of all the others, such an approach would not ensure adequate preparation for later success, or again, it would not ensure adequate preparation for effective interaction in our actual classroom environment. Therefore, we have to be aware of what happens if we segregate these skills, such as listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Okay, so I have a question here. Why do people offer classes focusing on segregated language skills? So my answer is that perhaps they think that it is easier to present courses on writing divorced from speaking, or courses on listening isolated from reading. So they may believe that it is instructionally impossible to concentrate on more than one skill. But in reality, in our actual teaching, as you know, we need more than one skill, right? When we want our learners to make up a conversation, so they have to listen and they have to speak. As you see, at least 2 language skills should be used in a single activity in the classroom. So what happens in our classroom, in our classes? So segregated skill EFL or ESL classes present instruction in terms of skill-linked learning strategies. What do I mean by strategies? Rather than teaching the function of the language, yes, they focus on some certain strategies of reading, writing, listening, or speaking. Okay, but experts demonstrate strategies as though they were linked to only one particular skill, such as reading or writing. However, it can be confusing or it can be misleading to believe that a given strategy is associated with only one specific language skill. Okay, therefore, we have to make use of more than one skill in a simple classroom activity. Okay, so many strategies such as self-evaluating, asking questions, analyzing, planning, predicting, right? They are all applicable across skill areas. Okay, so in other words, we can easily say that common strategies help weave the skills together. So teaching students to improve their learning strategies in one skill area can often enhance their performance in all language skills. Okay, so could you please have a look at this quotation? Okay, why do I say the segregation of language skills might be only partial or even illusory? So in many instances, as you know, when we enter the classroom, when we start our teaching, so as I said earlier, we should make use of more than one skill. So in reality, as we all know, it is rare for language skills to be used in isolation. So if the teacher is, let's say, creative or has some abilities to create a communicative and interactive environment in the class, so a course having a discrete skill title may actually involve multiple or integrated skills. So everything should depend on the teacher proficiency. In other words, okay, we need some certain materials, teaching materials, supplementary materials. But here, the important point is the philosophy of the teacher, right? So let's see an example. Okay, so this is a course given, let's say, at intermediate level, right? So could you please pay attention to the first instruction? Teacher gives all of the directions orally in English. The second one, students might discuss their readings. And the third one, students may be asked to summarize or analyze readings in written form. Okay, when you read these statements, probably you will consider a single skill. But it is really impossible to talk about one specific skill in each case, in each situation. Okay, so teacher gives all of the directions orally in English. So we have to listen and we have to understand what the content is. Students might discuss their readings. Okay, here we need at least the use of two main skills, speaking and listening skills, and students may be asked to summarize or analyze readings in written form. Of course, they're supposed to use their writing skills. So what happens in our real life, in our real teaching and learning environment? So in a real sense, some courses that are labeled according to one specific skill might actually reflect an integrated skill approach after all. That means whenever you conduct a specific activity in your instruction, so you should be using at least 2 or 3 skills at the same time simultaneously. Okay, then, if we have some criticism about the segregation of our 4 main skills, so what does integrated teaching of language skills mean? Okay, so when we say integrated teaching of language skills, I have taken this definition from the Longman Dictionary of Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics. As you see here, in language teaching, integrated approach means the teaching of the language skills of reading, writing, listening, and speaking in conjunction with each other, as when a lesson involves activities that relate listening and speaking to reading and writing. Okay, so I believe that this is a clear definition of integrated approach or integrated skill instruction. Okay, so what do we do in a specific class, in a specific lesson, if we are using this approach? I mean, if we are using the integrated approach of teaching language skills. Okay, when we enter the classroom, okay, when we start our formal teaching, so what should we do in a specific class? As you see from this diagram, there is an integration of our basic skills, but we shouldn't forget to integrate the language components. So what are they? Of course, I'm talking about vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. So in other words, when we talk about integrated skill instruction, so we should integrate our 4 main skills as well as our 3 language components. Okay, why do we need this instruction? So as you see here, I have taken this from Widdowson. By the way, Widdowson is the first or was the first person or linguist, okay, to call for integrating the 4 language skills. So this expression, in a way, was put forward by Widdowson and was used for the first time by Widdowson. So language uses take place in the form of discourse and in specific social context, not in discrete units. For this reason, to become competent language users, so our learners need to develop receptive skills as well as productive skills in both spoken and written discourse. In fact, this is the main philosophy of integrated skill instruction. Okay, let me repeat my last statement. to become competent language users. So the learners, the students, need to develop their receptive skills as well as productive skills in both spoken and written discourse. Okay, I would like to add another comment about this quotation. As you know, a typical instructional paradigm found in many locations around the world deals with employing learners' receptive skills to provide input and modeling for productive skills. I mean, they need to have some exposure. They need to have some input, right? So it could be spoken or written discourse. It doesn't make any difference. So first of all, we should provide the necessary input for the learners, okay? And then the learners are expected to produce something in the target language, in a written or in a spoken discourse. Okay, I would like to give you an example. For instance, listening selections or listening scripts can be used as models for speaking or for interaction or for creating a discussion, or reading input supplies models for writing. As you know, in each stage of our lesson planning, it could be in your pre stage, it could be in your while stage, it could be in your post stage. So you should make use of these receptive skills as well as productive skills. By the way, what do I mean by receptive and productive? Let me clarify these two expressions. So when we say receptive skills, we mean reading and listening. When we say productive skills, they are writing and speaking. Okay? So, before the discussion of the reasons behind skills integration, I would like to refer to Harm's suggestion. So I would like to read Harm's suggestion because it's really important. So he has an interesting view about these two terminologies, integrated versus segregated skill instruction. Okay, Harmer says that this position is clearly ridiculous for two reasons. Firstly, it is very often true that one skill cannot be performed without another. It is really impossible to speak in a conversation if you do not listen as well. And people seldom write without reading, even if they only read what they have just written. Secondly, though people use different skills when dealing with the same subject for all sorts of reasons, someone who listens to a lecture may take notes and then write a report of the lecture. As you see, his suggestion involves the integration of these four skills. Okay? So, in the following slides, I would like to talk about some reasons why we have to integrate our language skills. Okay, there are some reasons. Okay, this is the first reason. So the first reason is that one of the principles of communication is the whole more than the sum of parts. In this respect, what is needed is the ability to deal with strings of sentences and ideas in the real time. In other words, communicative language is an important part of our philosophy in integrating language skills. Okay, because we need to talk about the real learning and teaching environment. Okay, we always support the idea establishing in communication or interaction among our learners. Therefore, we should be careful about these reasons. Okay, this is the second reason. So integrated language instruction that engages learners in meaningful communication and enables them to attain their learning objectives can be found in an unlimited array of models, teaching materials, and techniques. Okay, so we need meaningful communication settings. So in order to talk about integrated language instruction, so why do we need meaningful communication setting? Of course, they have to improve their proficiency level, okay, in order to reach their learning objectives. So in order to reach their learning objectives, of course, we should be careful about choosing our teaching materials. Okay, we should be careful about the techniques that we are using in our actual classroom setting. Okay, probably we will be talking about some communicative activities, some tasks in the following slides. Okay, I would like to talk about one more reason, and then we will move to the other slides. Okay, this is the third one. In an age of globalization, pragmatic objectives of language learning place an increased value on integrated and dynamic multi-skill instruction models with a focus on meaningful context, meaningful communication, and meaningful context. So, as you know, as I have already mentioned, communicative language teaching places a great deal of value on teaching language skills with the goal of enabling learners to communicate meaningfully both inside the classroom and also outside the classroom. In other words, they have to transfer what they have already learned in actual classroom setting to outside the classroom, to their real life experience. Okay, so skills integration may provide this chance for our learners. Therefore, we should make use of integrated language teachings and various integrated pedagogical paradigms in our classrooms. Okay, now I would like to talk about the advantages of using integrated skills teaching. Okay, so integrated language teaching and various integrated pedagogical paradigms, as I said, are usually associated with outgrowths of communicative language teaching. So we cannot claim that integrated instruction is always appropriate in all contexts of language teaching and for all purposes of language learners. But if you pay attention to this diagram, so as Red points out, there are certain advantages in providing students with integrated skills. Okay, first of all, I would like to mention the first one on the right. So this gives learners some opportunities, okay, to redeploy the language in different contexts and in different modes. Okay, so integrated skills instruction allows for the recycling and revision of language which has already been taught. And also, this instruction gives a chance, okay, to give confidence to weaker or less confident learners. In other words, this kind of instruction may help the learners to gain their self-confidence. Okay, and again, this kind of instruction can provide an opportunity in teaching and learning programs. So in terms of providing tasks, so we should make use of tasks. I'm going to talk about task-based learning. So tasks are closely related to each other in this kind of instruction. So again, this instruction can ensure that there is input before output. So the input ensures the basis of integrated language teaching instruction. Again, this kind of instruction may allow for the development of 4 skills within a realistic communicative framework. And finally, this instruction can provide variety. okay, in order to motivate your learners. So you may need this variety when you have an integrated skill instruction. Of course, the advantages and disadvantages of integrated teaching may crucially determine its usefulness in foreign language teaching contexts. I do not mean that there are lots of advantages. Of course, there are some disadvantages, but when we compare the advantages and disadvantages, of course, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Okay, so in order to sum up the advantages, we can say that integrated skill instruction helps our learners carry over their skills and declarative knowledge from one skill to another. So which facilitates and simplifies the improvement of the other skills as well. So this kind of instruction creates a dynamic and exciting classroom environment, especially for learners. So this kind of instruction enables learners to have a more realistic access to authentic language learning. But a segregated approach does not offer a meaningful understanding of language or does not offer a motivating style to learning a foreign language. And this kind of, integrated skill instruction, this kind of instruction leads to focus on realistic language, therefore can lead to the students all around development of communicative competence in the target language. And integrated skill instruction is enthusiastically accepted by our learners. And most of them can have a positive attitude toward this approach or this kind of instruction. And finally, the last one is in this kind of instruction, so our instruction may lead to better comprehension of the material by students. I'm talking about our teaching materials, our supplementary materials that we use in our actual teaching. So this is the summary of the advantages of using integrated skill instruction in our real teaching. Okay, so I have concluded the first part of my presentation. Now I'm going to talk about two different forms of integrating skill instruction. So there are mainly two types of integrated skill instruction. As most of the colleagues know, the first one is called content-based instruction, language instruction, and the second one is task-based language instruction. Okay, let's start with content-based language instruction. As you see in this diagram, there are three subcategories of content-based language instruction. So why did I take these two types of instruction? Because these two are mostly used in our field, in language learning and teaching, okay? Task-based and content-based language instruction. Okay, so let's try to clarify what we mean by content-based language instruction and what do we mean by task-based language instruction. Okay, in content-based language instruction, students practice all the language skills in a highly integrated and communicative fashion while learning content. So what is the content here? So the content could be science, mathematics, social studies, okay, fine arts. So if you pay attention to the diagram here, we have both components, content and language. So we should integrate content and language in content-based instruction. And we should make use of our four main skills in this kind of instruction. So If you look at the characteristics of the content-based instruction, we can easily say that this kind of instruction is equally useful at all grades, at all levels of study. But the only matter is that the nature and difficulty level of the content obviously differ from grade to grade. As you see the steps of the ladder here, so it's really very obvious, right, to have different differences from one grade to another grade. So the content selected for the beginners should involve some basic social and interpersonal communication skills for the beginners. Okay, so we need simple activities as well as they need some basic and social interpersonal communication skills. But for the higher level of learners, I mean for higher proficiency levels, so the content becomes increasingly academic and complex. So while we are making use of simple communicative tasks or communicative activities for the beginners, so we try to use more complex and more complicated ones for the higher level of proficiency. Okay, now, if you remember the diagram, so content-based instruction have three subcategories. The first one, the first model is called team-based. So as the name suggests, we need a specific team, right? So this team should integrate the language skills. So what kind of a team do we need? For instance, natural wonders of the world, right? Or urban violence, cross-cultural differences in marriage practices. So could be your team. But it should integrate the language skills into the study of this specific topic. So the team must be very interesting to our learners, and the team must allow a wide variety of language skills to be practiced, always in the service of communicating about that specific topic, that specific team. Okay, finally, we have another model. So in this model, language and content courses should be taught separately, but they should be carefully coordinated. So there seems a perfect symmetry among all the subject matters organized for in mutual complementation and reciprocal supplementation. That means we should be careful about the combination of language and content courses. They can be given separately, but they should be carefully coordinated. And the third one, the third model is called sheltered model. So this model is such in nature that the subject matters for instruction should be selected and graded to sit to the level and interest of our learners. So in order for selection, the student's existing proficiency level should be identified by the administering proficiency tests. Okay, so do you remember the second part, the second type of instruction? What did we say? Task-based language instruction. Okay, this is also commonly used in our classes. So task-based instruction is an approach based on the use of tasks as the core unit of planning and instruction in language teaching. So everything should be based on those pedagogical tasks. So each task should require a communicative purpose. So each task should be accomplished. So the proponents of this model assert that it is a logical development of communicative language teaching. Why? Because there are some common principles. Okay? So we should talk about communicative language teaching movement while using those pedagogical tasks in our actual teaching. So the communicative task, of course, should be a piece of our classroom work, which involves learners in comprehending, manipulating, producing, interacting in the target language, while their attention is principally focused on meaning rather than form. Meaning and, let's say, fluency or use rather than form. So the task should also a sense of completeness. That means each task should be accomplished by the learners. So being able to stand alone, so as a communicative act, its own right. So if we are talking about tasks, pedagogical tasks, they should have a communicative purpose. In other words, all these tasks should act as a communicative activity in our real teaching environment. Okay, so in task-based instruction, as you all know, we prefer group work activities and pair work activities. Okay? So we often use pair work and group work activities to increase our students' interaction and collaboration. For example, we can make use of some activities in our task-based language instruction. So work together to write and edit a class newspaper. Is there collaboration here? Is there interaction here? Of course. There is both interaction and collaboration in this activity. Okay, what about develop a television commercial? Of course, this activity, this task requires some interaction as well as some collaboration and cooperation among our learners. Okay, the next one, the third one. Enact scenes from a play. Yes, it could be a role play activity. Okay, so you may assign them different roles. You may have a group work activity. Okay, so you may arrange a problem solving activity. So you can assign them different roles to solve the problem. I mean, the group members, you can assign the group members different roles in order to find the solution of that specific problem. Okay, and then they may have a practice for giving directions to a stranger, and they can prepare a condolence message. So when we consider all these tasks, all these communicative activities, so these activities, these tasks can be used at all levels of language proficiency with varying degrees of learning complexity. So while determining our task, so we should be careful about the level of the learners. So we should always consider the language proficiency of our learners. Okay, so I would like to conclude task-based language instruction here, but I would like to add some suggestions, and I would like to continue with some suggestions, with some considerations. So in order to integrate the language skills in ESL or in EFL instruction, so teachers should consider these suggestions, these strategies, right? So they should learn more about the various ways to integrate language skills in their own classes. So as I have already mentioned, they can make use of content-based instruction, task-based instruction, or a combination of these two. And again, the teachers can reflect on their current approach and evaluate the extent to which the skills are integrated. And they can choose their instructional materials, textbooks, technologies that promote the integration of listening, reading, speaking, and writing, as well as the associated skills of vocabulary, grammar, and etc. Okay, I have a few more. Again, the teachers should consider, even if a given course is labeled according to just one skill, remember that it is possible to integrate the other language skills through appropriate tasks. Okay, and also we should consider some learning strategies. So we should teach language learning strategies, and we should emphasize that a given strategy can often enhance performance in multiple skills, not only a discrete or a single skill. Okay, these are some considerations. These are some suggestions. Okay, I would like to sum up what I have tried to cover in today's presentation. So, I'm sorry. As a result, today, after decades of research in our field in language teaching and learning, it seems clear that in many cases and for many purposes, the segregated teaching of language skills is likely to be less effective than the integrated instruction, simply because in reality, communication does not take place in terms of discrete linguistic skills. Okay, this is my last statement. Okay, thank you for listening. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Probably Aydan Hocam will help me to have your questions.
Of course, Paşa Hocam, thank you very much.
Aydan Hocam, that's all from my part. If any questions?
Yes, there are some questions and I'm going to read them for you. If you want, you can just stop sharing your screen and then we can see each other. And
of course, Hocam.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Defne Hocam, by the way, first of all, thank you very much. It was a very informative presentation. And I have my own questions, but I'm going to first direct Defne Hoca's question. Mm-hmm. Do you think integrated skills tasks have a place in assessment of English proficiency?
Hocam, it's out of our scope, but in my view, in my opinion, of course, why not? So if you are talking about communicative language teaching, so we should test what we teach, right? So this should be our motto. Why? Because if you are talking about improving listening, reading, writing, so we should include some questions about listening, reading, writing, and also speaking. So as you know, there is a negative washback of testing on our profession. Mm-hmm. Because there is no parallelism between the things we conduct in our actual teaching and the questions that we include in our testing. So we should consider some different views on assessment. So assessment is a crucial part of our profession.
Yes. And I don't think we should treat assessment separately. I believe assessment is just another task.
Yes, you are right, Hocam.
If we start treating assessment like any other task, our students will also start seeing evaluation and assessment as a part of natural, process of language learning. I think we are creating a monster. We teachers are creating a monster, and we are just like, boogeyman is coming, exams, tests. I'm going to show you. I'm going to take my revenge, that kind of thing. I don't think that's necessary. Turan Hocam, you can unmute yourself. Please, you can do that. I can't unmute you. You can only unmute yourself, Turan Hocam. Okay. While Turan Hocam is trying to unmute himself, maybe I can ask my question. As you know, teachers of young learners, I know you're interested in young learners, although it's not your field of study, continuously say that writing is a very complex skill. We should avoid it for young learners. You know my answer to this question, in fact, I know that. But what do you think? Do we really need to avoid writing when we teach young learners?
Hocam, if we are talking about integrated skills, integrated approach of language skills, so we shouldn't neglect any of these skills. We cannot neglect the writing skill because it's one of our productive skills. So we should observe their performance, okay, when they produce something in their statements, maybe in their sentences, maybe in their small paragraphs. We shouldn't neglect the writing skill for young learners. If they are able to read and write, so why not?
Totally agree. I think people, when they hear writing, automatically think that it is writing an essay, writing an article. Well, solving a puzzle is a writing activity. Doing a word hunt, for example, is a writing activity because it's based on spelling. I don't know, there are so many games involving writing. I don't know why we should avoid on purpose writing when we teach any age group.
We shouldn't avoid.
Yeah, okay.
We should always be aware of the importance of that productive skill.
And scholars,
even they write a single vocabulary item in that puzzle, it's also a writing.
Yes, definitely. And scholars keep saying that writing helps people internalize language. So without writing, that's why people keep saying that today the young generation, the new generation, suffer from language problems because they do not write. The only thing that they do is texting, and most of the texting items are either shortened versions or emojis, you know. So I think we are getting lazy day by day. Okay. Pınar Kahveci Hocam says, you have mentioned that it was Widdowson who first proposed the need to teach language skills in an integrated fashion. I would like to know what the thinking behind the segregation of language skills was. Who proposed it and why? How much do we really need it as teachers or learners?
Hocam, as far as I know, the segregation of these language skills started from the structural view of language learning and teaching.
Yes.
But I have seen the Widdowson name in one of the articles. As far as I remember, he was one of the first linguists who used this expression, I mean, integrated language skills. That's why I have mentioned it. But from the structural viewpoint of view, so all those scholars, all those linguists propose the segregation of these language skills, and they should be given separately from each other.
Yes. I believe, Pınar Hocam, the traditional approach, the idea, of course, was not a bad idea. It wasn't a bad intention. People thought that if they gave little pieces one by one, students will collect these little pieces and put them together and form their language. Well, that is a view, and I don't agree with that view definitely, because language is such a huge thing. We can never, find the right pieces to offer to our students. Do you remember in the old days, we used to start with pronouns? I, you, he, we, am, is, are, then to be, that kind of thing. Who says that these are the first pieces that we need to offer? Who? Some crazy linguists, I guess. Okay, Zekeriya Hocam, considering the 21st century skills of the learners, writing is really crucial since most of the learners listen or speak the target language on the net via games or chatting. True. By the way, I have recently learned that 21st century skills are called global skills nowadays. They changed their names because the century is changing, but nothing else is changing. So what we should do, we should change
We can
its
also
name.
call them survival skills.
Yes. Some people call them soft skills. Some call them global skills. So, yeah. Ahmet Cihat Yavuz Hocam, do you think there are students that can better master English through segregated approach?
Of course, Hocam. If we talk about 1940s, 1950s, as you have already mentioned, why not? In those years, yes, the approach was that, and people tried to improve their skills separately. I mean, they started learning some grammar patterns first, and then they improved their lexical items. So in those years, yes, but in recent years, in our recent pedagogical paradigms, we do not support this idea. That's why we have to talk about teaching these skills integratedly.
Paşa Hocam, what do you think about teaching dead languages? If I'm teaching Latin, for example, is it possible to use segregated approach?
Of course, why not, Hocam? So if it is Latin, so there should be some skill-based courses.
Yes.
I mean, it could be translation,
yes,
it could be reading, it could be writing. So we can make use of different strategies as well, not only skills, but we can make use of, let's say, vocabulary teaching in a traditional way by finding synonyms, antonyms, etc. So if it's a that language, of course, we can make use of the basic strategies of segregated language teaching.
Yes.
Or instruction.
In fact, that's why I want, well, in fact, it was my way of indirectly answering the question. Unless you're teaching a dead language, no, segregated approach is not good for anyone because language is a whole. It means something as a whole. Okay, I'm not going to repeat what Paşa Hoca has said. So why are we cutting it into pieces? Why? We shouldn't. Okay. Yes. History just repeats itself. Yes. Paşa Hocam, by the way, somehow, yes, thank you very much. Paşa Hocam, something else. You mentioned task-based language teaching, and you gave us some examples. However, the first example that you gave, which was related to newspaper, making a newspaper and editing it, something like that.
Okay, let me find to jump from my notes. So you are talking about the activity, the task card.
Yes, the first example that you have
the first one was Working together to write and edit a class newspaper.
Yes. So they are creating a newspaper. Is this more like project-based learning, teaching?
It is project-based, but before that project, so they have to work together. I mean, they need collaboration and cooperation.
Yes.
So in that specific task, again, they should accomplish a communicative purpose, but it could be project-based. Therefore, there should be a product when they accomplish their task.
Okay. Okay. So there is no clear-cut line between task-based and project-based. As far as I know, task-based is more like there's one basic task and students first do the pre-task activity and then do the task itself, and then they do a kind of a follow-up activity. Project-based is more like free. So you give them a project and they do everything. They collaborate and cooperate and they decide what they want to do. Okay, sure. Turan Hocam, would you like
hello.
to? Yes.
Hello,
well,
Turan
at the end,
Hocam.
I was able
Welcome.
to connect my microphone and video.
Okay.
I had a problem with my mobile phone, so
I see.
I just turned on the computer.
That's a good idea, Hocam.
Thank you very much. Yeah, because we have choices, you know. Life is a matter of choice.
True.
I'd like to thank both of you. In fact, that's a really great opportunity every week. And last week I missed Özden Hocam. I'm very sorry for this. Although you sent me a message, but I didn't see it. The problem is I don't use Messenger very often.
Okay.
WhatsApp. Nowadays the trend is WhatsApp, you know.
True.
Tevfik Hocam, thank you very much. You have raised a very important issue. Rather than segregated, we have to teach integrated approach and test. Aidan Hocam has already mentioned, and also one of the, I think Defne Hocam, she has also mentioned about it. But in Turkey, there is a mismatch between testing and teaching. If you look at the textbooks or the syllabus, they have designed as integrated approach. And I use the Ministry of Education textbooks in testing and in teaching skills, in material development, everything. And really, they have been good unity and flow. But in testing, when I observe the teacher's test, this is totally segregated. So it creates a kind of shock for the students because in the class, they have integrated approach, but in the exam, segregated. So, and also most of the teachers do not test some skills like listening, writing, and speaking. So it is just based on reading, vocabulary, and grammar, because they usually take the university exam or some proficiency exam like YDS as a model. So that creates a lot of problem. And also that creates a kind of inconsistency with the teachers themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turan Hocam has already presented a wonderful talk as a part of our series, and you can find it and listen to it on our YouTube channel, and I strongly suggest you should. It was wonderful. Again, he was mentioning how important it is to teach language integratedly and how to, treat language as a whole. Okay. Ayşe Can, my dear precious hocams, how flabbergasting this is. Still trying to teach I know. Yes. Ayşe Hocam says it is really kind of hurtful to see that some teachers are still trying to stick to their old habits, trying to teach the old-fashioned way, use old-fashioned way in the classroom. And I believe that's why we keep losing our students. They lose their interest because it's very boring. Well, I have one more question, Hocam. This is about content-based, or maybe I should say CLIL. CLIL is more European, content-based is more American. In Anatolian high schools, CLIL was tried out, as you remember. You're a graduate of Anatolian High School.
When we were young, Hocam.
Yes. Those were the days.
Those were the days, yes.
And the reason why they changed the regulation, the law, and said that major scientific course should only be studied in the native language was because students failed to learn the content. Well, the language, of course, both. They failed to learn either. So, considering this fact, considering the fact that we have already tried this and we observed that when students are exposed with two unknown entities at the same time, both language and content, and when the content is a bit too academic, they panic. And this also brings us the problem of teacher training, because teachers who are mathematicians are not language teachers are not mathematicians. So there's this bias, you know. Should we really go back to this model, or should we more like stick to like the subcategory of it, like topic-based or theme-based?
Hocam, I prefer team-based or topic-based. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because in our teaching training departments, there is a clear problem about the content teachers. They're not proficient enough in the target language, I mean in English.
Yes.
So it's really difficult for those people, I mean for science teachers or for math teachers, okay, to conduct those courses in English.
Yes.
That's why I prefer team-based or let's say
topic-based
syllabus. So instead of using content-based syllabus in our country. Yeah. But if we have a chance to train those teachers both in English language teaching and in their content area, so it would be more useful and wiser, okay, to use that kind of syllabus. I mean, the principles of content-based language instruction. But nowadays, we do not have this chance in our country. I mean, we cannot find qualified content teachers.
Yes. True.
Okay, they may be good at their own field.
Yes.
But their English is problematic.
And the way they teach is also
the way
problematic.
They teach. Yeah, that's the main problem. That's why I prefer the team-based or topic-based syllabus.
I completely agree with you, and this is more like my personal opinion, but when it comes to CLIL, when you teach content, the vocabulary related to that content can be so heavy, can be so uncommon. You sometimes think, why am I teaching this? You know, when are they going to use this? Because if you're teaching, for example, if you're covering biology content, wow, the jargon there, of course, is totally related to biology. And these words are not common words in daily language. So I think personally, I approve CLIL, but I'm not 100% for it. And topic-based, I believe, is more relevant. And I believe the ministry has considered that as well and implemented both topic-based and Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. At the same time, if you examine the syllabus, you see the topics there, like sports, leisure. Of course, they are general topics. Okay. Are there any
may
other?
I add something? Sorry,
Of course,
to this?
Go ahead.
Clearly, in the United States is normal because that's their own language. I mean, Khalil teachers also are not language teachers, but math teachers, biology teachers, etc.
Yes.
But it's a problem in Turkey because it's difficult to find, as Tevfik Hocam said, the teachers who are proficient in English. Initially, it was successful in at the end of 70s and at the beginning of 80s because the Anatolian high schools were only in certain cities. But as a result of policy, each town had an Anatolian high school program or one Anatolian high school, but we didn't have enough teachers, enough materials. So that created a problem. Now we have the same problem with science schools, fen liseleri, because now in each town they want to have fen lisesi. So it's because of infrastructure that we could not support.
Yes, true.
On the other hand, as you said, it's difficult for a language teacher to teach a field of study like mathematics, chemistry. I had this experience when I was in Çukurova. I was teaching in the science faculty, and at that time I was an okutman and teaching English to chemistry students 4 hours a week, and I was teaching something that I didn't know.
That is very problematic. If someone asks you something, how are you going to answer that?
Yeah, that's right. So my students were more knowledgeable than me.
Of course. Well, thank you very much for your contribution. Pınar Hocam, I don't know why you say course books sometimes fail to successfully integrate skills. Well, of course, there is no ideal course book, and course books are human creations. So, of course, they are going to fail in some areas. But today, when you look at the books used by the government schools, state schools, they are all integrated. Are they all great? No, they are not. But they're all integrated because the syllabus requires it. I believe it's the teachers who segregate. I have noticed that some teachers pre-teach something before they start the unit. Just start the unit, for God's sake. Why are you pre-teaching? No, I want to first give the word list. Then we will, the syllabus says, guessing the vocabulary in the context. Why are you giving the word list? No, I want to give it. No one can stop me. So I believe the major problem is our teachers do not follow the policy created by the ministry.
For sure.
Please, if you're a state school teacher, please visit the Board of Education website, download the syllabus, the curriculum, first understand the philosophy of the curriculum, and then understand the syllabus, and then present in the classroom accordingly, okay? Because you may not like the policy, but that is the national policy. You need to stick to that. I'm sorry. And I hope you will stick to that. Okay, any other questions, my dear colleagues, for Paşa Hoca? You know me, I never stop talking. I talk too much. Any other questions? I guess not. Hocam? Okay. Ayşe Hocam, I totally agree with you. Ayşe Candaş Hocam says, 30 years ago, you were teaching us this. We were still criticizing this. That's, bir de yaşım ortaya çıktı Ayşe Hocam. Why did you mention 30 years ago?
Dear Jam, come on, you're still young, and I have become 49, and this is the 24th of mine teaching English in a way, but still we are criticizing the same thing. I couldn't stop writing. Sorry.
No. I totally agree with you. I mean, 2 years ago, I believe I gave a talk to Gazi University students, Old Habits Die Hard. That was the title. The only people who carry this tradition are the language teachers. Because if they change, students will change. The parents will change. Of course, it's not going to happen over the night, but it will happen slowly. Change never happens like that. But hopefully, if I can see that change before I die, I will go happy, you know. Paşa Hocam, Mine Hoca says, do you think that CLIL is more appropriate in ESL context rather than EFL context?
Of course, in ESL context, it's more appropriate to use content-based instruction or CLIL because, as Turan Hocam has already mentioned, the content teachers can use that formal language as well as the content teacher is a knowledgeable figure in her or in his field. Therefore, I prefer an ESL context for content-based instruction or for CLIL.
That's a very good point, Minoja. Thank you very much for your contribution. I believe we don't have any other questions, Paşa Hocam, and I know that you're tired after a long week. Thank you very much. Again, thanks a million.
Hocam, I also thank you for your invitation. I'm really glad to be here as a part of this event, and I would like to thank all the colleagues who participated in this session. And I would like to say goodbye and have a nice evening. Please take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as usual, my dear colleagues, thank you for being with us, never leaving us alone. And hopefully you have benefited from this talk. And I will see you next week with another distinguished speaker. Take good care of yourselves.
We'll look forward.
Bye-bye.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.